It's the Get Published radio show. And here's your host, Gerald Everett Jones, the guy who has all the answers because he's made all the mistakes himself.
The topic of today's show is something that tortures every writer from time to time, the challenge of facing that totally blank page or screen. Our guest after the break will be motivational speaker and humorist Tim Gard, who has some tips and tricks of his own for generating new material. But in this first segment, we'll have the kick of a pilot-on free-for-all with my wonderfully opinionated co-hosts, Cheyenne, Cockrell, and Tom Page. So what do you do when you find yourself drooling mindlessly with no clue how to start?
The first thing I like to do personally is change my environment. So if I'm sitting at my desk at home and I'm just stuck, I go outside, go to the library, see if a change of scenery will inspire anything.
Or if you're in solitary, you want to break out, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ernest Hemingway had two answers
to
that
this. Guy, one of my favorites, yeah.
His answer for one was first you wash the car, then you clean out the refrigerator.
Writers have incredibly clean houses. I've heard that said.
But the other one is much more useful, and it is don't write yourself out. Leave some for the next day. For example, if you're writing a plot where the end of the chapter, somebody falls off the cliff, right up to the time just before they fall off the cliff, go to bed, get a good night's sleep, wake up fresh, and then start with the fall off the cliff.
So you subject yourself to the cliffhangers that you want the audience to participate.
It's called self-discipline in some dated environment, but yeah.
And that's the one area where you actually have self-discipline, I understand.
Yes, hopefully, of course, you do have ideas for writing. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in this fix.
Well, we should clarify that my colleague Tom Page here is more of a fiction guy, and Cheyenne Cockrell, being a journalism graduate, is more from the expository writing side.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, it's definitely a different process when you're doing something, I would say, fiction versus nonfiction. Just as
if some people today know the difference.
Yeah. Just as far as inspiration for either a work of fiction or a work of nonfiction, I find it different. Like my process for each one is different, I would say.
Well, maybe structured versus unstructured, or free form versus
definitely
outline.
Yeah, I mean, fiction is obviously a lot more free form. You can get inspired from almost anything, whereas nonfiction, I like to start out very, very structured. I like to have a plan, and I'm a lot more detail oriented.
Well, it'd be more typical to have a real business need or a purpose or an assignment for an expository piece, of course.
Yeah, definitely.
Unless there was something that was just, you were so curious, it just bugged you for years. I mean, that's happened to me too. What about the notion of drama as conflict? I think some guy said that was the core of it. Maybe this guy Aristotle?
That makes sense. I would say he is right. I would also add that is the core of great comedy too. It's a different approach, but
argument
is
yes.
conflict.
Yes.
And doors slamming and people misunderstanding each other and the dog running out the door, stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. And Aristotle also has a great quote on that. Anybody can become angry. That is easy to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, for the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way. That is not within everybody's power.
Well, I don't think his hero, Socrates, exactly followed that because, they made him drink poison and die. But, I can understand. Well, it's kind of interesting. I remember reading Robert McKee's book about screenwriting, and he was talking about one paradigm for a scene, which would be true for fiction, and actually for even some, if you were going to do a case study in an expository piece, is that you begin with a disagreement about action, and that leads up to, through the scene, a disagreement about values. So an example would be, where shall we go to dinner, dear? And then it ends with, you never loved me. Okay? And I think a lot of us can write that script.
I think maybe I could see that as a comedy. Where shall we go to dinner, dear? And then they go to a place that's very formal and they get very depressed. And they said then they drop into a snack shop and it's very loud and noisy. And then they get happy.
And then she says, I'll have what she's having. Right?
There you go. And she's having something you hate.
That's a throwback. Somebody will steal that scene for an updated movie here one of these days. Cheyenne, that was Harry Met Sally?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've seen it.
All right. So some stuff is timeless. Okay. I think that's true. But, and Cheyenne, we've talked about this on the show before, about the idea that conflict isn't necessarily weaponry.
Right. Yeah, we did a previous episode where we were talking about drama, like of the mind versus physical violence. And I think when you're doing something with like a conflict of the mind, it needs to be crafted much more artfully. And as we were just talking about Aristotle, he actually has another quote kind of commenting on the same thing.
Did you translate this from the Greek or?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No. But he says the ultimate value of life depends upon awareness and the power of contemplation rather than mere survival. So really our biggest battles are not physical but mental. And I think it's much more impactful on a reader when you're getting something that you really have to contemplate versus I'm going to kill this guy with my sword.
Well, I actually had to judge a student film festival once, and I watched like 51-minute student shorts, and it was amazing to me that easily half of them, they picked up a weapon or a sword to resolve the conflict. And I thought, and these were not underprivileged kids. These were private school kids. So
it's an easy way out.
and it's in the culture, and I think to the extent that we think beyond that, create an opportunity for people to understand the value of debate, or you could argue either side?
I would think if you're doing comedy, it's many, many conflicts, many, many arguments, always resolved with one resolution at the very end that takes care of all of them.
The engine of that satisfying,
yeah,
okay,
or a huge laugh.
The applause line, the exit laugh. Well, you guys, I don't know. I thought maybe you would disagree with me more, but I think we got to the core of this. So very cool, very cool.
Get Published Radio will be right back after this message.
Get Published is all about helping you. Yeah, I mean you get published. And these days, the way to go is self-publishing, where there are no agents or editors or big publishing houses telling you can't, or making you feel like you're not good enough. Going back in history, many famous authors were self-publishers. With his own printing press, Benjamin Franklin published Poor Richard's Almanac in 1732, long before he was a famous statesman. That's how we know Ben's sayings, such as, "Fish and visitors smell in 3 days." Seriously, if you want to change your life or change the world or both, it's a great time to get in the game. Ebooks are particularly easy. With a click, you can reach a worldwide audience. Did you know that there are more people in China who read English than those of us who use the language in all the rest of the world? So if you've got a story to tell, write that memoir or that novel that's been percolating in your head. And if you're an established professional, or if you have a job you dislike or no job at all, give us that business or technical or even political book that establishes you as an expert who deserves serious attention. Yes, it's easy to get published, but understand you'll need help if you want professional results. Editors and copy editors help you clean up your prose. Book designers make the product eye-catching. And publicists help you be heard above all that social media noise. We have those support resources on our website, getpublishedradio.com. And there we've also got a request for services form, where you can get personal attention for whatever might be keeping you from getting it done. That's why we say getpublishedradio.com is your doorway to unlimited self-expression. Hey, it's all about the First Amendment. Use it or lose it.
Welcome back as Gerald talks with motivational speaker and humorist Tim Gard.
I heard him give a motivational speech, and I was motivated to put him on the show. Tim, you're a smash hit keynote speaker, and I have to say you slay audiences as a stand-up comedian. You want to tell us which came first?
Sure. I've never really done stand-up comedy. I opted instead to concentrate on my speaking business. Most companies want to hire professional speakers who are funny, and I don't really think, I mean, there's places for stand-up comics, but I've been funny my whole life. That they could be funny, that I think things began to open up, doors opened up for me.
Well, indeed. Now, I heard you say that you write every morning. What's your advice to writers who are well, you know, we all tend to be freaked out when we stare at a blank page. How do you get going?
Well, you know, one of the first things that I do is I will look at news clips. I'll watch the news. I'll read news clips. And I really look for things that are totally absurd and just kind of jot them down, or things that kind of stick out in my mind. And I'll start out by writing things down. The other day, I read an article said that if you write negative thoughts down and throw them away, then you'll feel better. And the joke I wrote is that if you write your negative thoughts down and throw them away, you'll feel better. And the punchline was, I feel better, but I really miss my iPad.
Okay. And do you think that there's
I think a lot of it is the discipline of first writing anything down. I mean, it's literally getting up in the morning and writing, knowing that it's going to happen and there's no way I'm going to talk my way out of it.
Well, do you think that there's an engine of comedy, that there's some attitude or approach that you know will probably generate wacky stuff?
Humor is the combining of ideas that aren't normally associated with one another. That's at the heart of it. And so I'm a voracious reader in addition to writing, and it seems like the more I read and the more current I become, then it helps spark ideas for me to read all kinds of different things. I mean, I just don't read about speaking or writing. I have all kinds of different input. Like I read Dean Koontz, and he had written a phrase in one of his books that the water was as clear as a baby's conscience. And it was a moment when I realized that reading that was a great phrase. But if I were to say it out loud, it wouldn't work. And so really educational moment just in recreational reading too.
Well, I was telling a producer, you know, I had this script that had been around town more times than a troubled aircraft.
That's all right, though.
There you go. Yeah, see, you inspired me. Yeah. Now, I went to your website and I saw that you have some books for sale. You know, one of the mantras of this show is that your book is your calling card. How would you react to that statement?
I think it's your best calling card. It's your best credential. You would know more about the statistics than I do, but getting a book and having a book is an instant credential for anybody. One of my books, Just Plain Funny, spelled Plane, is a collection of airline stories that has done really well, sharing them with flight attendants or having them read the stories and then deciding which ones they found funny or not. But basically, the books that are on there, either the compilation books I've been involved with or my own projects, have been the result of writing stories, keeping track of them, and then putting them together. And I think most people have a whole bunch of stories they're working on. They just don't finish one.
In the talk that I heard you give, yes, it seemed to be very travel-oriented. And, of course, here we were at a professional conference where everybody's just got jet lag from wherever. And I know that they could all identify with that material. One of the things that struck me was it seemed like the thread through that comedy was dealing with frustration.
Yes, that's correct. It's a metaphor for almost any frustrating thing. I mean, when we travel, we give up control. And so when people find out that I've flown 2 million miles just on United Airlines, then how do you deal with that when people travel they don't travel very much and they can hardly deal with it? And so what it is, it's literally, I think in my audiences, people want a shortcut to something in an hour, or a black belt, if you will, in something in an hour. And my job is to take the culmination of all of my experience, travel and everything, and try to give people shortcut ideas that's going to help with their learning curves.
Also, I think it's what struck me had to do with attitude. And I know that, again, as part of your motivational theme, you were trying to pump everybody up. You know, it's right after breakfast and everybody's head's clearing and it's, what they call shave time in the business world. You really wanted to get everybody to a higher place, to a higher level of energy. Sometimes we say, Get Published Radio, it's the show where wannabes should want to be. You know, I want to be, I want to get up in the morning, I want to be more, you know, and it's all about always learning and and I think really, here's the thing, not being afraid to make a mistake.
No, I'm very much agreement with that. Darren LaCroix, a speaker, Toastmaster speaker, says that done is better than perfect. I think that for our grammarians in the audience, they probably may not agree with that. But
yes, we have editors who sponsor the show, so. But secretly, I'll agree with you that having something there. Of course, the secret there is iteration. You know, you refine it, and then there's that wonderful saying by director John Huston that scripts are never finished; they're simply abandoned.
That's very true. Well, and I think what I do is I take it to a point, and then I turn it over to an expert who will go through and make sure that, although it's funny that it's spelled properly in context and everything else, I don't know how many people can write, be their own editor, and expect perfection from themselves. I think a lot of it has to do with getting help and knowing where your area of expertise is, and then finding others that can take your product and move it to another level.
Oh, thank you for that endorsement. Our advertisers could not have said it better themselves, so you plugged right in. Now, Tim, also, you know, since our audience is aspiring writers, and we've got boomers who maybe have time on their hands, maybe they've got expertise that they want to share, or they've got that pent-up novel, or, you know, they've got granny's diaries that, you know, really need to come to light of day or else they'll die on the shelf. And also a younger generation of millennials that maybe want to experiment with new forms, or they want to talk about new products, or they want to rant about, you know, how challenging the world is. But in many cases, we have the urge to be public speakers. What would your advice be to anybody who may have a book or is about to have a book and wants to get on the road?
Well, most of the things that I've heard from even publishers is that if you are comfortable speaking, then as an author, you're a big bonus.
Get Published Radio will be right back after this message.
You know, in all the history of the world, with today's technology, it's never been easier to get published, to self-publish your printed book, ebook, audiobook, even multimedia ebook. And not just novels and memoirs, or how-to books and histories, although if that's what you've got, let's have it. But also poetry, spoken word, graphic novel, cartoons, children's picture book, interactive video, games, virtual reality, and imaginative mashups of all this stuff. Get into the game. Along the way, you'll no doubt need some professional help from an editor, a book designer, a publicist. But isn't the investment in yourself worth it? How about you take the money you'd spend on your next vacation and get famous instead? GetPublishedRadio.com. That's our support website where we've got links to all the resources you'll need. And don't forget that request for services form if you crave some personal attention. That's GetPublishedRadio.com. Hey, it's all about the First Amendment. You can use it or lose it.
You know, Runke Productions, the audio magicians, can take your radio shows, podcasts, audiobooks, and ads from the streets of New York to the outer reaches of the galaxy.
I think we need more echo at the end of that.
Look, visit us at runkeeproductions.com.
I still think we need more cowbell.
Welcome back to Get Published Radio. Let's rejoin Gerald and his guest, Tim Gard.
There are a lot of authors that are great writers that are not good speakers, but I think could probably learn to be better, just as like any other craft. My suggestion would first be is that if you're comfortable in front of the room, or more comfortable in front of the room than you are sitting in the room, then you should be doing public speaking. And the way that you get better is to do more of it, to surround yourself with other experts. National Speakers Association is who I belong to, and literally learn more about the craft and cut your own learning curves. If you're scared to death and being in front of the room, then you're part of the majority, then you can work on that. But the biggest thing is stick with what you feel comfortable with. Don't let a fear of public speaking stop you from writing.
Well, Tim, this has been a kick. How can our listeners get in touch with you?
My website is timgard.com, TIMGARD.com, and my email is just as narcissistic as it sounds. It's Tim at timgard.com. I'm always happy to meet new people and happy to come up with any sort of a suggestion that I can. And I think that it's really important that they hear that speakers speak and writers write, and they're not mutually exclusive. We can do them both.
That is an inspiring note from Tim Gard. Thank you, Tim.
Good to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
All smile and laugh in the same language, right? And what happens is it draws us together. Who wants boring training? Nobody. But when you laugh, you feel good. And what occurs within you is you want more of it. And what I'm going to talk about today is to show you ways that you can use humor as a business skill so that you can communicate faster, you can have more fun when you're doing it. And he said, Mr. Gard, you made me laugh. I'm going to upgrade you to first class for free. So I go down through security. There are 9 lanes at either side of DIA. Only 2 of them are ever open at any given time. I have a 50-50 chance of getting behind somebody with a gallon of gasoline or a brick in their backpack. And I don't get selected for secondary screening. Gotta enjoy the journey, people, all right? And I get up to the gate, and I go to hand my ticket to the ticket person. I said, hey, I got upgraded to first class for free. And this young man says, Mr. Gard, there's only 1 class of service on this airplane. That is a cruel hoax, people. And I'm sitting there with me and my supervisor and about 12 other people reading the minutes, and I start going to sleep. I cannot stop it. Gravity is, I have lost control of the upper part of my body. I'm going down. And I don't know what to do. And I know if I fall asleep, I'm going to get in trouble. I've got to figure out a way to get out of this terrible mess. And all I had to work with was a pen and a piece of paper in front of me. And I thought to myself, what would MacGyver do? You know, how can I MacGyver my way out of this? You know, and is that my pen? Straight out the door. And I'm standing out there wondering if my career is over, and not 10 seconds later, another pen goes flying out the door. It's my supervisor, and he goes, good one, let's not do this again, though. Yes, sir.
Well, hopefully we've helped some of our listeners get unstuck. But then after you've coughed up that draft, what about editing?
I feel like a lot of people forget to get an editor, or they think that they can do it themselves, but you really need that kind of unbiased third party to go in and then look at your work and see what you've done just from purely like kind of mechanical perspective. You need that second opinion. And there's lots of different types of editing. They're broken down into roughly 4 categories. Editors know if you want some light editing, they're not going to go through all of it. If you want heavy editing, they're going to check each and every one. So there's mechanical editing, just making sure consistent style throughout. Then, of course, you know, the classic grammar and usage, going through making sure you don't have grammatical errors, which I feel like is really difficult nowadays just because our language is just ever-changing, evolving. So a lot of that can be personal preference.
Well, developmental editing, too, I mean, you know, to the extent that I've been through that, something that publishers used to do a lot. You know, you read about the famous editors of Scott Fitzgerald, whatever, but the idea of an editor who coaches you on what's going to be in the next chapter, the publishers are not going to do that for you. Isn't that right?
That's true. With developmental editing, they're much more like a project manager. They kind of guide you through the whole process. Rework what's already there while leaving you in charge of the content.
More true for nonfiction, of course, than for fiction.
Yeah, of course. And then with nonfiction, you can get a lot of little details that need to be checked too. If you have things like tables or graphs or charts, just making sure that each figure number corresponds to where it's supposed to go. So it's a lot of detail work.
Well, Tom here actually copy edited a couple of my books.
If you are going to write something, fictional or factual, I strongly suggest you take your basic plot and tell it to a trusted friend.
Talking about like pitching it orally, like they do in
like
movie
telling
things?
it. Tell it. Writing is storytelling. It all begins with people talking. You're putting words on a page. If it's stuff that's factual, your main challenge is going to be staying on subject.
So if you're in solitary confinement, you do it to the mirror, maybe.
Exactly. But that's how you find out real flaws. Say, if it's a story, somebody will ask, well, why does this person do that? And then you realize there's a flaw. Fix it. Get it down in a way that somebody has responded to it. So I strongly suggest that.
But you did copy edit as well. I mean, you were finding grammatical
copy
mistakes.
Edit, grammatical stuff. With the stuff that I have done, very few people manage to get off the subject, especially if they're writing stuff that's factual or stuff that's historical and maybe controversial. Go for the stuff that's interesting.
Well, in Cheyenne, they drill into your head in journalism school, either like the AP manual style or like the Chicago manual. I know they're different. But.
Yeah, we follow AP, and it's very strict. You need to abide by this, but like I said, it's so hard to stick to like a predetermined style nowadays, just because we are continuously getting new terms.
And if you don't know what choice to make, at least be consistent.
Exactly. As long as you're consistent throughout, people can respect that,
or
I guess.
They won't catch it.
Yeah.
And that's our show. Get Published is all about self-publishing and self-expression, and that getting published and the ease of getting published these days is really all about exercising the First Amendment in this free society of ours. What we need these days are more ideas. Even though we're deluged with information, we need more good ideas. And we need debate about those ideas. Book-length debate, not just snippets that are posted on social media, not just selfies and cute pictures of your pets, the things that you really think. And remember, because in self-publishing there are no gatekeepers out there, that is the good news and that is the bad news. So hire some good help. Perhaps you found that here. You may find it on the website, whatever you're looking for, whether it's an editor or a book designer or somebody to help you promote. But hire good help, get good advice, and by all means, please get published.
The Get Published radio show with Gerald Everett Jones is produced by Runkey Productions. Our producer is Lori Marple, and your announcer is Bill Navarro. Music by Jason Shaw. You'll find links to support services on our website, getpublishedradio.com. So whether you're an author, a publisher, or a self-promoter, get help at getpublishedradio.com. And thanks for listening.